Well, our guest on this segment is Reuben Grant,
It's Gant.
from the John Hope Franklin Center. John, it's good to have you here.
Good to be here.
First of all, we hear about him. Who is he?
Dr. Franklin is a Tulsa native, born in Rennesville, Oklahoma. Is probably, I wouldn't say probably is, the most noted historian of African American history in the country. Received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Held before his death 139 degrees. I think six were earned, the rest were honorary. But he dedicated his life to social justice and equality, specifically with the contributions of African Americans to the building of America and specifically the building of Oklahoma.
You know, you tapped on, I think it triggered a thought in my mind. The town that he's from
Rennesville.
had a newspaper, black owned, black operated, and not a lot of people know this, but there was a time in Oklahoma when there were over 40 black owned and operated newspapers at one time in our history. Not counting the Indian newspapers or leaflets, and not counting the white newspapers. But that's an amazing statistic. People don't even know that.
They do not, and really that was the pipeline for news and how people communicated was through black publications at the time.
And that we can't proceed without acknowledging the Green Book that was put out by the postman in New York City that let folks know of color where they could stay, where they could eat as they traveled in this country.
Absolutely.
Do you think we've made enough change looking back? Is there much more that needs to be done?
No, I don't think we've made enough change, and there is a lot that needs to be done. I mean, if you look at the current events of today, personally, I think we've taken a step backwards and impeded our progress forward, and that's what the John Hope Franklin Center is all about. We're missioned with promoting social justice and human rights, and we have a long way to go in that perspective.
That was my next question. It seems as though, on the one hand, ground has been covered, but nowhere near enough. And if you talk with the people, I don't mean any race in particular, but if you talk with the people, everybody says the same thing. More work is needed.
Absolutely. And part of our programs is to encourage community engagement and dialogue. And we think one of the issues is that there is an unfamiliarity that is cross-cultural, where we don't really get to know our neighbor, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of culture. And the more you know about people and someone that doesn't look like you or worship the same way you worship, the more you become to appreciate the value of their life as equal as yours.
You know, they need your voice in Washington right now. Really, really bad. It's intriguing to me that Oklahoma, particularly Tulsa, was a stop on the Underground Railroad. And because of that, we were blessed with musicians, doctors, lawyers, singers, writers, people pushing for change. Some changes came about because of the Underground Railroad. But it's incredibly interesting, too, to note, and it should be remembered, and I hope somebody picks up on this, the changes that have been made just to now are maybe a 10th, maybe a 20th of what's needed. Because, and I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. there is a new motion picture out featuring an all-black crew. The hero from an action comic is black. That's never happened. Not in a serious form. This one has blown the box offices wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Children everywhere are flocking to it, all colors. Mm-hmm. This is a big deal. And as insignificant as it might seem, it is a contributing factor to race relations, is it not?
Absolutely it is. And one of the most important things that we need to remember is our history. And sadly to say, a lot of our history that involved people of color has been omitted from our history books, mm-hmm. or not included, mm-hmm. in that respect. So what's being done today is really in catch-up mode to educate and to bring to the forefront the contributions of people of color to our country.
I met and got to know a fellow named Dahl. Many years ago, Harold was a reporter anchor with CBS for a good many years. And I met him because I was in Houston to take a flight to Germany with a film crew. We were using film back in those days. Car broke down in the middle of that oppressive Houston heat. Harold just happened to pull up and say, "Hey, can I help?" He didn't have to. He stopped. We loaded all our gear in his car. He took us to the station, helped us get transportation to the airport, and then stayed in touch with me for years. And then as he went on to do other things with the network and they put him overseas, just before he left, I had a chance to talk with him. He was here in Tulsa. And asked him, I said, because he'd mentioned barriers to me for people of color making inroads into the network. And I said, "Are the doors opening?" He said, "Very slowly, and just for men." Mm-hmm. Now, back then, and I'm showing my age, but back then there were no women of color. There were no black, no Hispanic, no Indian, nothing. The networks wanted male only, mm-hmm. and ceilings are slowly cracking.
They are, but not fast enough. The contributions of individuals should be recognized regardless of their color. And especially if they are contributions that have contributed to the advancement of mankind. So that's what the John Hope Franklin Center is about.
All right, right now you don't have a building, but you have plans for one. What will be included in that building?
What will be in that building will be some archival documentaries that we've done. We've interviewed survivors of the 1921 race riot. We've had interviews with descendants of those survivors. We have interviews with Dr. Franklin before his death.
He didn't die that long ago, did he?
He died in 1999,
it's not that far back.
Not too far back, you're right. But he was 92 years old, I do believe. And so we will have what we call a parlor, where individuals across differences can come and have conversations, civil conversations, let's say civil discourse about their differences, and trying to understand each other, create some understanding between themselves to better appreciate each other.
You know what, we're out of time and we didn't cover half of what needs to be covered. Will you come back?
I would love to come back.
We'd love to have you. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
And it's good to see you.
Thank you.
We'll talk more.
Okay.
Even if you did go to OSU. You rascal. That's all the time we have for this edition of Perspectives. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.